Fantastic. Well, welcome back. Episode 2, Season 8. Here we are, folks. Almost didn't make this happen. Made this happen. Good for us. Now, having said that, I'm glad to be here because of the following reason. Well, first and foremost, the Philosophy Club meets every Tuesday from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. in EO32. That's the Office of Student Life classroom designated for most of the clubs on campus. And this past meeting was, I would say, extremely fruitful. Now, I've been saying this to my classes, but I guess, it bears repeating. Some of you have already heard this. I've been the faculty advisor of philosophy clubs going back to, 2013, I want to say, over Northlake before I came here. And, they meet every week, as ours does as well. And so I've had the topic of evil be a philosophy club topic 7 or 8 times at least. And I got to tell you, this last one, because that was the topic, probably the most fruitful discussion I've ever seen on the topic. Not to disparage previous conversations, but I'm so inspired by the plethora of perspectives that come from, again, the variety, the diversity of students that we have here, especially when it comes to, again, their philosophical understandings of things. And I was just so pleased to, and, delightfully surprised to see that people really aren't on the same page necessarily when it comes to evil, as much as you might expect, because evil is such a vague term. It's such an ambiguous term. And so, we say evil, we're kind of like, okay, well, that could, we more or less assume that somebody knows what we're talking about. But there was a lot of nuance to the discussion. Am I wrong?
No, I think probably my favorite part of Philosophy Club is the different people and the different majors and the different backgrounds. And, I mean, it's kind of rare to hear the same person say the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the best part.
Hey, I would agree with that. I feel like, because, look, we only had almost 40 people there last time.
Yes.
We had like 35, 36 the first day, and then I think we topped that this last meeting.
We did. We filled all the desks, and some people had to stand around in their room.
It was standing room only, exactly. Pretty impressive. And, all credit due to the faculty advisor. Obviously not. All credit due to the student officers, honestly. Now, having said that, again, there were a lot of people interested in expressing their different views of evil. Now, before we segue to the quack, excuse me, I almost said the word as it actually is. How about we do some introductions? Introductions. Thank you, folks. Maybe my best ever.
I'm not doing it now for that, just because of that.
Anybody can start, really. Feel free to begin. And again, when I say introductions, you don't have to say your name only. Just, plug. This is also plugs as well, advertisements. Feel free to, spread the love, spread the word when it comes to other organizations or clubs or just things that you're involved in that you want people to be aware of.
Hi, I'm Ryan Cruz. This is my first year with the Philosophy Club. And if I start singing Bohemian Rhapsody, Rhapsody? How do people pronounce it? I'm very sorry. And by that, I just mean I'm just going to go into the mic and be like, Mama! I'm just kidding. I have, such the urge to do that. Anyways.
I could see it's a little tempting.
Should we harmonize?
Going to sound terrible. But
Hey, I just might.
Welcome, Ryan.
I'm Serena. This is my second semester at the Philosophy Club. I'm an officer of the Philosophy Club, but I am the president of the Psychology Club, the PsychDex.
Welcome. All right. So, psychology, 1 foot in the social sciences, 1 foot in the humanities. That's good. That's awesome.
Is this on?
Yeah, eat that mic.
My name is Corey.
Hey, Corey.
I'm just a guest here, but I'm majoring in.
Do I hear it?
Get a little closer.
Yeah, eat that mic.
Yeah.
I'm in the. Sorry, I'm blanking a little bit.
That's okay.
First time on the radio.
Ryan is a very intimidating presence. He has that.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it as I'm a guest on today's show.
Well, I'm glad you could be here. Yeah, and
Mysterious.
you suggested one of the topics for the future meetings, which I appreciate. Not everybody is forthcoming with suggestions, so glad to have you. And who do we got over there in the
My
far
name
corner?
is
Oh.
Noah. I'm first time getting into philosophy club. First time in clubs in general.
Oh, no kidding. I didn't know
Same,
that.
actually.
Really?
Yeah, this is my first club,
Oh, that's
at least in
interesting.
college.
I had no idea. Y'all are so, outgoing and, into it that, well, I mean, hey, welcome. I'm glad you found your spot then. Don't go anywhere else. No, I'm joking.
God.
All right, and I'm Professor Manzi. I'm the faculty advisor of the Philosophy Club. Now, let me ask you this. Again, evil, before we get right directly to the re-quack, evil itself is something that I feel like, even before you understand the word for it, you kind of, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I might be, I'm just throwing this out there for consideration, you have a general sense of how to act and how not to act. I did not split the infinitive there for my grammarians. And so what does that amount to? It seems like, and here's something that we didn't quite get to, although Sabrina, I think you kind of pushed this a little bit at the beginning. Where do we get a sense of how to behave as humans and how not to behave? And is that initial sense, perhaps our upbringing, perhaps our genetics, is that initial sense the seed of what later becomes conceptually our understanding of evil?
I think it is, because I mean, it does start genetic, and then it develops more as we grow into our environment, and we learn what our social norms are from first our parents, and then when we get to school, fellow children around us, and then as we get older, as we start to, take in what society is. And yeah, like I pushed, it starts genetics, and, sometimes with disorders like antisocial personality disorder or even psychopathy, like sociopathy, things like that. Like, sometimes social norms don't really hit the same way with them. Like, it's what's normal to us isn't normal to them. And then, what's the word I'm trying to say?
We're just getting into the
I don't know.
I think that's one of the many reasons why I appreciate living in America. The fact that I can see so many different cultural views and ways of life that are just so different from my own that it can expand my views of what I believe would be good and evil, or at least beneficial, like just so many different things. Like the world is filled with so many things, and I'm so glad I'm able to experience that.
That's true, but even with America,
like that point.
it's also how self-aware you are of yourself and everything around you. Like my dad is white, but my mom is Vietnamese, and so when she came here, she's very Americanized, and she didn't sit down and tell me about my Vietnamese heritage until I was like 6 or 7, and from birth until that age, I was very all my whole world was like whitewashed and very Americanized, and then I get told I'm Vietnamese, and then my whole world is open. Like I'm learning about this world outside of myself and outside of what's in my small, narrow perception, and I think that helped a lot. And I don't think very many people get that opportunity sometimes.
Can I ask you
So-
something? Did that change? Orlando, you're bearing the lead. You can't see me on camera. No, can I ask you something? Did that compel you to rethink your values or your system of values, I guess?
It did, actually, because my dad was raised Christian, so I went to church for a long time, and then when I sought out everything about Asian culture, I actually leaned more towards Buddhism for a while, and I definitely took in the culture, and my values started really merging between American values and Vietnamese values.
So I'm kind of curious. Well, why exactly is it that those kinds of things kind of shape us? That did you really change as a person? Learning something new about yourself. Like, how did that change you specifically? Because I understand, yeah, you have a background, you have a culture and whatnot, but how did you as a person really change when in reality you just learned something new?
Pop quiz.
Because I've always wondered that. We've always.
I have too. Yeah.
I think there's people who they always talk down on people who want to identify themselves with cultures or certain races or certain ethnicities and so on and so forth. And I think that's, I don't know, I kind of see that as a bad thing, because why shouldn't we identify with a certain culture in a certain way? And
We should. There's nothing bad with it. In fact, human beings are incredibly social creatures. Like, as much as you say you're introverted or like I hate people, you need them. You really do.
yeah.
And You know, as
Linda?
social creatures, we always want a sense of belonging, maybe with a culture, a religion, a certain like small sect of, you know, a specific group. Bottom line is, when we are forming our identity, we do seek out people who are like us, and we do want to feel like we belong somewhere.
Yeah, but also just to play devil's advocate here, doesn't it have like kind of a double-edged sword? Doesn't it kind of separate us in a sense as well? Because then
Yes.
That is, I know that's a big part about human psychology, is that we are like a big part of our sense of sociality. I think that's a word. Is able to like look at other people and people that are our people and be like, I can differentiate us versus them. Like they are different from me and my people, and we are together sharing these similarities or something like that. I know that was spoken sometime in my psychology class. I don't remember.
So
Yeah.
then, oh,
I want to dig up Sigmund Freud and
Well, listen, I only want to throw this out there. Because again, the topic is evil, and this is an awesome conversation, awesome topic. But I mean, bring up this idea of differences, and perceptive differences. You know, physically in terms of the senses, as well as ideological differences in terms of the intelligence, or you could just say in terms of your intellectual preference, I suppose. Where does evil come into play? If humans are incredibly social, and perhaps that means we're inclined towards possibly accepting or being willing to accept, where does evil come into play?
I think you can identify evil at this point with maybe indifference,
Oh,
or
interesting.
rather a lack of empathy, is not wanting to understand a different culture, not wanting to accept another's culture, and that can be seen as evil because you're impeding on their freedom, and I don't know how far you guys have gotten into like the concepts of evil and like what makes up evil, but I think in terms of culture, I think that's one of the biggest things is ignorance.
I agree. I definitely think that, and I think it's what you said, a lack of empathy and ignorance, and it's also rooted in fear of, I don't know this, so I don't like it, and I feel like this different thing is impeding on my life and my social world. So
Yeah, specifically fear of the unknown, or what would we say would be included in that fear?
yeah, just fear of the unknown, fear of the different. I mean,
I think it's a combination of fear and also a lack of direction. It's like you're acting on a fear isn't necessarily evil, it's just the way you go about it.
exactly, yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, fear happens. It's exactly how you react to it.
Hey, real quick, not to interrupt, Sarita, can you move that microphone so that Ryan's mom is able to see him on the video? Because his face is being obstructed right now.
It's a beautiful face. We want to see
wait,
it.
whose microphone? His? Because like
Yeah, mine or Corey's or
Check out the image.
Well, there's no screen anymore.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know
hey,
for a fact-
Orlando,
I
click,
know for a fact
play with that mouse pad.
when my mom.
Perfect. Now, click left.
Noah,
There
Perfect.
actually,
There you
just
go.
try to move the
There
camera
we
just a
go.
little bit to the
Okay.
like that way.
You move it physically?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can move the.
Because
Try playing. Yeah, try playing with
I
the
know
camera.
for
There
a
we
fact
go.
now, my
there.
mom-
Okay.
Yeah, feel free
All right,
to.
that's good.
Feel free to mess with stuff.
I know for a fact my mom is
We
going to
own
watch
the
this
studio.
and she's going to be like, "Why are they covering my baby with a microphone?" And then she's going to hear this. She's going to lose her mind.
Well, you should know
Ryan's mom just know that he chose that seat.
that's actually what my mom thinks too. Every week, so she'll be mad at you, Orlando.
Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, again, I do want to return to this idea of indifference as somehow being open to the possibility of allowing for oppression.
Mm.
And if oppression is, that which keeps you from being free in terms of, especially things like freedom of expression, freedom of the kinds of experiences that every human being is kind of built for or designed for and therefore entitled to, maybe that is just as bad as enforcing evil, or what do you think? I don't know.
Well, you can go first.
I really wish, like, if there wasn't that many people at the meeting, I would have loved to actually go into like a whole Socratic circle and ask everyone, hey, what is your definition of evil? That's why I wanted to start writing down to like similarities between everyone's like ideas of a universal evil.
We've
set of
actually
things.
done something like that before, and I don't see why we couldn't do it. We should have done it, honestly.
That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to do, but I was
Yeah.
also like, there's a lot of people.
Yeah, but
There are a lot of
That's
people.
true.
A
But
couple things. First of all, Ryan, thank you for telling people to stop coming. Listen, I like that as well. But here's the thing: it's tough to put people on the spot, because
True.
It is. I mean,
I mean, if you were to say to me, "How would you define evil?" I would have to give myself a minute. So you know what I mean. It's a I don't want the pressure to build. Having said that, like yourself, I am very interested in hearing what other people have to say about it. That's why I'm shutting up everybody in the studio so I can talk. No, I'm joking. But yeah, let me ask you this: what difference would it have made, in your opinion, if people were putting forth a definition of evil that you thought was the opposite of evil?
Oh.
Ooh, that's actually pretty. I thought this was just going to go about like where do you think the discussion was going to go if everyone had a say in what they thought evil was, and I was like, that's just going to bring more people into the discussion. I would have loved that, but this is an even better question.
Yeah, it's
I'd
the
fight them
possibility-
on the spot. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. No.
All right. Well,
I think
my money's on you, Orlando.
I think inevitably it is going to be different in terms of maybe culture, but I think at the basis of what they think is evil, there's going to be some commonalities like ideas of justice and injustice, and possibly even freedom. Because you look at someone who says, "Oh, I want to kill people," and I think that's not evil, or someone says, "I think killing is evil." Guess what? There's like, "Oh, well, my idea of injustice is different from yours."
Yeah.
And so, although the external factors may be different, I think at its common base, we can find something.
Okay. I mean, some people would say that's optimistic. Other people would say that's rational.
Yeah, something I wanted to bring up.
Go
Yeah.
Speak
at
closer
the,
to the mic.
At the group discussion.
I can't
there-
hear you.
Get right into that mic.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
Talk
yeah,
right
yeah.
into
well,
it.
no, is his mic messed up then? Because I can't hear it in the microphone or in the headphones.
Try talking now.
All right. Does it?
Yeah,
does it work?
it's not working.
Oh, your mic's just not
Yeah, that's
working.
what-
Might have
Here.
to just share the mic.
Alright.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay. There. Yeah.
That's
good call.
probably why I was over here.
Okay, now I hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Cheeto mic.
Good point.
right there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it does have Cheeto dust on it. Why is it orange?
It
Yeah,
does.
something
It's-
I wanted to bring up was at the discussion they were asking, like, is murder evil? But what about those cultures where that's socially acceptable?
Like a human sacrifice type of thing.
Yeah, I didn't have much more thought on it than that because I kind of came in late to the discussion, and a lot of people were trying to talk at once. But somebody labeled like murder as evil, and I was just like, well, in some parts of the world, that goes on, and it's not, it's not as crazy as other parts of the world.
Right?
I'm glad you brought that up. Can I just throw something out there? Because I'm teaching this in my ethics class, and but I'm going over stuff that we did not go over in our class, Orlando.
Wow.
So there's an example, and I want to build on the point just made. There's an example of there's an ancient culture where here is what is considered good for them. At a certain point, as humans do, we get old to the point where we're unable to be efficient, which is to say that it becomes, and this is its own sort of journey, I suppose, but there comes a time where you're just not able to do the things you once were able to do. And so you go from being a net positive on society to a net negative, where you're more dependent on people giving you the resources than you are on being able to cultivate or produce resources for people. Now, there are some ancient cultures, not even that ancient, just alternative cultures, you could say, who believe that when you reach that point, it's your duty to leave the society by way of death. So, because the last thing you would want to do is be a burden on the very next generation, which you've spent your life making sure they're in a good position to thrive. So there'd be something ironic, that's putting it lightly, there'd be something somewhat hypocritical if you, once you got to a certain age, you were like, okay, I've reared you, my children, or I've developed this society, I've contributed to its development, now take care of me. Now, okay, I'll cut to the chase here. One of the rituals of celebrating the end of a life is that the parents will come to their children and say, I want you to murder me. Now, and this is a point of honor. It's a point of pride because it's the person, it's the elder saying to the society, hey, I've realized that I'm dragging down the common good. And now that in and of itself is controversial, but here are some of the details. And if you're interested in this, check out Chapter 2 of Thomas Beecham's Philosophical Ethics. Here's the thing. You ask your children to do this. Your children dig your grave for you while you're alive. And this is honorable. This is like showing love to your parents if you're the child. You're waiting for the day when your parents are loving enough of the community to say, I need to eliminate myself to be for the sake of the community. So the children dig the graves, and then the child and the parents descend into the graves and they hang out and they imbibe on peace pipes and things along those lines to sort of, everybody is kind of relaxed. And then the children take a thong and strangle their parents with it. And their parents die in that grave, and then they bury their parents.
Did you say a thong?
Yeah, I said a thong.
Interesting.
Good
Did they wear
God.
the thong first?
I don't know.
I would just drink poison.
But here's why I bring it up, because it's an extremely, again, you might say anti-intuitive or counterintuitive or just not what you would expect, unexpected way of ending life. But in this particular culture, this is considered to be an honor. So if you were a parent and you realized you weren't able-bodied enough to contribute to society, and you ask your children to put an end to you, and they say no, that's considered extremely shameful. It's almost like your children don't love you enough to put you out of your misery, which is kind of what you want. And so, and this also, if you are unable to have children, you have to ask like your closest friends. And if they say no, it's shameful. It's bad. So murder is for the sake of honoring your family. It's murder done out of love. This was a real culture.
I think this is very similar to Native American culture, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think there's overlaps.
They practiced that, yeah, and they even said that if it wasn't your family, it would have to be a close friend.
Yes.
And if you didn't have anybody to kill you, you'd be shamed to be like this elder person just going on about life.
Just taking from society, not being
Yeah.
able to give back to it.
Huh.
So again, all that is just building upon the point that was made earlier that again, it's tough to decide whether or not there are things that are evil that are quote unquote universally evil. Because even if you thought about things like murdering your parent, matricide, you would think, what's more evil than that? Well, in some cultures, it's actually considered, again, virtuous.
I think in terms of just the superficial things, there's no universal idea of good and evil. I think that's just
Really?
what it is.
'Cause
Yeah,
most people don't agree with that.
there's a rationality
I mean,
behind it.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
sorry.
mean, maybe I don't know if we could ever find one singular thing everyone in the world is like, oh, yeah, that's evil. I mean, you got to take into
that's a strong claim.
societies, cultures, and then, how the societies are built. I mean, when we talk about social constructs all the time.
And that depends on who we're asking in terms of like.
So evil is subjective, is what you're saying.
Everything in philosophy is subjective.
Yeah.
Well, hang on. Maybe not.
Like, okay, but would we include people in that discussion, like people with mental disorders like sociopathy and psychopathy? Because they're probably going to have
I don't know, Orlando.
some things to say.
Yeah, well, that's the whole thing is that, at what point are we excluding members of the society from, quote unquote,
Discussions on evil?
yeah, kind of. Or at the very least, if we're going to judge people's behavior, shouldn't people who exhibit a certain kind of behavior have a voice? Or, on the other side of it, because here's the thing, and Sarita, you emphasize this idea of sort of cultural relativism. And I think it's something that a lot of people have discussed. I've had conversations with you about this, Orlando. It seems like this. Just because a culture accepts it, can't we still say that culture is wrong? That their understanding of good is just incorrect as opposed to, say, relative to their circumstances?
I think the only way you could ever make some kind of argument for universal evil is literally discovering the human condition, is saying, okay, well, humans are of this nature, and so if anything goes against it, that's evil. And so when you're asking the question, is there evil, you're asking, well, what makes us human? And what definitively makes us human? And I think that's the question that it always comes back to, and it just seems to many people there's like, what's the answer?
Would taking that away be considered evil, or it just not being possible be evil?
Good question.
Or not it being possible, but like it not being allowed.
Yeah.
So freedom, like the taking of freedom, almost.
Like there's so many different variations of intent and methods between what you're doing that would constitute something as evil. There's talk about taking away freedoms, but also oh, nice. Like there's I'm trying to like focus my thoughts now, but everything just got crazy. Let me hold off on that.
That's okay. Take a minute.
I'm just trying to I'm trying to take in everything from the discussion on
headphones?
Tuesday,
And,
and I
we're
remember
talking about
people
Yeah.
had like very
But I definitely do like the direction of, you know, the taking away of freedom. And then, you know,
Or the
like-
taking away of even opportunity.
Ignorance.
opportunity,
Yeah.
freedom. Yeah. And then, I mean,
Ignorance.
because, I mean, once, you know, people go in jail, obviously, for something we deemed an evil, and then they get all their freedom and rights stripped away. I mean, some states, they can't vote forever, you know? So, I mean,
I think this is why people get so heated about like abortions and things of that nature, because you're taking away opportunity of a life, you know.
And at the same time, I feel like it's so dicey though, because then, well, what are we going to do for prisons? You know, you're automatically taking someone's freedom, but what if what they're doing is perceived as evil?
true, that's what I'm saying. They're in there because we perceive them as evil, and some people, I mean, people would say rightfully deserve to be there, and then other people, what, minor offenses that get their freedom taken away from them for the rest of their life.
So, yeah, I agree. And so then that's when it comes back to the idea of, like, well, how Manzi said cultural relativism, right? It seems like as if the only way to really set a basis of evil is with the society. As the society kind of makes up the idea of evil. It's not one person.
I agree.
So,
And then, I mean, what we might perceive as wrong from one society, I mean, is any society really perfect?
so it kind of seems like I'm going to go against what we just said, but I think
ahead.
it's possible to have a universal evil then, because then if it's the society, is it possible that all of humanity as a whole, not necessarily seen as a society, but all of it as a whole can have one thing they all disagree with? Is that ever possible? Or agree is evil?
I think it could be possible, but I mean, we all know that not everybody agrees on anything, and there's always that one person, one society that has to say no and has to be the different.
Well, I think we all just said it, though. It was the impeding of freedom. Whether that freedom is seen as rational or irrational or good or bad, you know, that may differ, but at the same time, that's still the one thing.
Yeah, well, somebody on the top might disagree with that. But what about like genocide? I think.
Well, think about the person who's acting. Let's say, oh, I think it's okay to kill people. But then someone tells you, no, you're wrong. Well, what are you doing? You're impeding on their freedom to say that I want to kill people.
Well, I mean,
I think in that situation, there's a big. I feel like there's something more to worry about than just freedom of speech.
No, but what I'm saying is that it involves a sort of injustice against somebody's will to do something.
well, then they're taking away your freedom to live, you know, so you have a right to fight that.
Yeah, definitely, I agree. But what I'm trying to say is, like, this concept of evil that we all come to is just this idea that we want to do something, but if someone else doesn't let us, or something along those lines.
So I guess evil is, you know, either taking away of choice or freedoms.
There's also the various religions of the world who have their own views of evil and how that works out.
That's true. There's the idea of like what might constitute philosophical's versions of evils, various religions' ideas of evil, because a lot of religions, what they constitute as evil, there does tend to be a sense of a pattern in, like, it's almost defying a lot of human desires or human, like, needs, like, I think I brought it up in the speech. I said, like, the 7 deadly sins were a good example.
Everything to excess.
Mhm, like excess is one of that's what all the 7 deadly sins are. They're just various forms of excess. And I feel like that's what a lot of religions, like their versions of evils are, is how excess can be destructive to a person's soul or a society based on whatever the culture views on what having excess or having an excessive amount of something would constitute for that time or culture. I don't think I made a lick of sense with that sentence.
I know you did.
Well,
No, that makes sense.
couldn't that come down to the idea that we're all naturally selfish? Because when you're talking about those things that you have excess of, they're all things that you might want have excess for you, you know, like such things as greed and lust and so on and so forth.
Well, life itself is very greedy. Everyone's fighting for survival. If you just try to put that into a sense of society, well, that does change things, because there's never been societies like human beings.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that, you know, from an evolutionary standpoint, we realize that as a society and as a group, we do function better together, but at your very genetic core, you're all about your personal survival. At the end of the day, you'd still pick your survival and your well-being well over anyone else in the society. And I think that's where it clashes sometimes, especially in power and social structure, is you want to say, or you intend to do well for the society, but at the end of the day,
Just give me a second. Yeah.
I mean, you're more worried about yourself, right?
Yeah. So what you're getting at is this sort of idea that we are by nature self-preservational.
Yes, self-preservation.
All life is.
Now, having said that,
Exactly.
well, before we go forward, I want to introduce some new guests here. I'm very happy. I haven't met my children in my whole life, and here they are on the radio show. Dr. Phil, let them in. No, I'm joking.
Oh my God.
We got some people just joined the studio, and again, this is it's more or less of a informal, casual hang of sorts. So you can come and go as you please. Yeah, feel free to introduce yourselves. You're sharing a mic over there, but don't be selfish.
Hi guys, I'm Sammy. I came on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, I remember you.
You're
And I'm Steve, and this guy brought me along.
Welcome.
Well, yeah, welcome both of y'all. Now, this idea of self-preservation, I want to throw this out there to hear y'all discuss this. It's something that I kind of alluded to on Tuesday. You're talking about society. I think that's the right place to take it. But here's the thing. What we understand to be, I guess, allowable or permissible in terms of human behavior has a lot to do with just what is possible in any given society. So I think I said the example last time on Tuesday that if you live in a society that doesn't have an understanding of private property, well, you can't actually steal because the very concept of theft can't exist. So that thing that's wrong for most people isn't even a thing. So this is why people argue that morality is maybe a social construct or a human construct. It's like depending upon the values of the society and the opportunities that society provides you with, your ability to do evil is sort of limited. Now you look at some place like America. Again, some things are illegal because they're conducive to evil behavior, and other things are legal that still might nonetheless be conducive to bad behavior. And so the question becomes, well, how do you individually comport yourself? How do you individually handle or deliberate over your opportunities? Because you could say that the more freedom you have, the more freedom you have to do bad things, to do evil things. And so, therefore, and I think you brought this up, Ryan, therefore, would the perfect society be a society where you're not allowed to do anything other than what is perfectly healthy for you? Does that sound like utopia? Does that sound like a prison?
Sounds like a prison.
Sounds like that book, The Giver.
Wait a second.
Yeah, you remember that one?
Oh, my middle school flashbacks are hitting me hard. I actually think it's very, Dr. Monzi's very right when it comes to talking about societies and ideas of what we believe is evil, because honestly, come to think about it, human societies, those are the places where the idea and concept of evil truly, really actually began. There's this, it's hard to look at animals and see if they can comprehend something as an evil act or understand it as an evil act, or if they would I think they're able to understand bad. Animals are at least
Right.
most animals, some
Definitely dogs can.
are able to understand
Yeah.
the sense of badness. There's a bad situation or there's a bad thing going on. That doesn't necessarily require the two most basic parts of life, which is surviving, reproducing, etc., etc. Monkeys mourn, they're dead. Elephants mourn, they're dead. Do they see that as some type of evil, or do they see that as just bad? And that was another big part of the discussion on Tuesday that I really liked, the idea of what's bad versus what's evil, and that's I
Yeah,
like that.
I think somebody brought up, the Coco doing the sign language thing and asking her where do gorillas go when they die, and she just said a comfortable hole or something like that.
That
so,
is exactly what I said.
yeah. So I don't know if they really can perceive evil. I think it's a construct that humans create, really.
Evil seems exclusively human.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying to get at. I really want to understand animals' views of we'll never know what it's like to be an animal, or what it'll be like to have an animal's point of view and the way they think, see, feel about stuff. But human society, I feel is the birthplace of an understanding of evil,
Mhm.
Like, what is evil if it's not just something so bad that it's offendable?
I think when it comes to evil, I think it's also important to maybe identify good. I think you guys kind of brought it up earlier, not necessarily, but I think good involves an idea of having freedom, understanding things, understanding boundaries, and then understanding, oh yes, I can do this. I have the freedom to do this, but I should withhold it. And so then when you compare that to evil, it's just this understanding that, okay, well, I understand what I shouldn't do, and I'll just choose to do it regardless. And I think that's where you were getting at, like, distinction between bad and evil. Because when you do bad, you might do it out of ignorance and might not necessarily be evil because it's not your intent. But I think with evil, it's just you choosing just to do wrong, period.
Well, earlier in the discussion, we did state that, like, ignorance is, like, one of the roots of evil, or at least it's very tied in with a lot of evil that happens in the world. And we also did state something about, what was the first part of the discussion that you said? It was, I can't remember it. What did he say before that? Like, I had something to say about it, and I don't remember what he was talking about. It was... What was it? The idea of, like looking at something, feeling like, oh, I have the freedom to do this, but I shouldn't, and that being good. I felt like that was close to what I was talking about when it came to... What the hell just happened?
Just move his chair.
That came close to, like, a lot of religious views of good. It's the idea of self-control, stopping a sense of, like, just excessive whatever.
Mm.
I was just pointing that out. That wasn't exactly like an argumentative statement.
No, I understand. You were kind of agreeing with me there. I forgot what I was going to say, though.
Listen, can I throw something out there that is maybe a little too obvious? Does doing evil feel good? Is it fun to do things that are quote-unquote evil? Am I crazy here?
No, it's completely normal to. That's completely normal with some people.
I think that
Get it.
depends on the evil action, or how it's perceived as evil in the
Yeah,
society.
it depends on the action. It definitely depends on the person themselves.
Yeah.
There's also a sense of selfishness associated with it.
Let's
Yeah.
bring back Ted Bundy. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, yeah, let's. Well, I was going to get on the track of, like, even people with, like, you know, antisocial personality disorder, psychopathy, sociopathy. These people, their social norms aren't the same as ours, and I want to say they're like sensation seeking, and how they perceive, like, stimulus is a bit numb compared to other people. I'd say, like, they require more stimulus. That's why, you know, people like that do more dangerous things. Like, you know, they'll steal, like, you know, murder, all this stuff. It's because normal actions to them are boring. They get no stimulus from it. And so sometimes when people are like that, they do bad.
I agree with that entire assessment.
That one doesn't work, Manzi.
It works a little. It looks like it's registered.
Well, it works because you can hear from the other mics. I
Yeah, you
think.
can
I
hear
can-
from the other mics.
I cannot hear him through my headphones.
Yeah.
Nope.
No.
Yeah, that's my volume in headphones.
Don't blow his eardrums out.
I think.
Do y'all feel like evil is a lack of purpose, or like a lack of, it's kind of like nobody inherently desires, like, oh, I just want to go out and be evil, right? Like it's more of some kind of action to accomplish, again, that feeling, that great feeling of doing it, right?
Yeah.
That actually kind of reminded me of, like, what Marcus said during the discussion, with the idea of, like, you're driving through the road, you get road rage, someone, I don't know, cuts you off or whatever, and he's just like, oh, I want to kill that guy, and then, like, 5 seconds later, I'm like, I'm alright, and I'm like, no, I don't do that. I don't look at someone on the road after they cut me off and be like, I want to murder that person. Like, who does that?
Some people do, and then it just falls back on choice. I mean, everybody has at one point be like, you know, F this person, I hope they're dead, or like, I'm gonna kill him, but then you catch yourself, hopefully, and you're like, no, that's really bad, I can't do that.
Some people?
Some people, not all.
Well, let me just say this. I had a similar. Can you hear me? I had a
Yes.
similar experience just now when we got here and the studio was closed, and I was extremely angry with the staff of the journalism department who's in charge of this. And now we're in here, and I'm like, oh, maybe I overreacted. The point being is this: that you don't necessarily have to become Ted Bundy, but you could still derive some sort of perverse, arguably, sense of pleasure over precisely doing the thing that you know not to do. And
Exactly.
And so if you, and so it's like this, you know, you don't have to go to some extremes where you're like a
No.
criminal, or at the very least not a major criminal.
Some people don't go to extremes, but you know, some people who are so numb to it and have tried other things, when other things stop working, go to the extremities.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it's kind of like a slippery slope. And look, I only bring it up for the following reasons. I wonder if, on the one hand, you can kind of skate, and again, I'm wondering this, you can kind of skate on sort of low-level transgressions because it makes you feel a certain way. And what is that way? Here's what I'm throwing out here. When you defy what is considered to be the appropriate code of conduct, you feel more independent. You feel autonomous. You're like, I can totally decide for myself how my life goes, what I do and what I don't do. Look, I'll even do something I know is bad, just to show you I am the author of my actions. Is that an inflated sense of pride? Or is that something that maybe is healthy for a human being to feel on some level? Like that you're capable of authoring any sort of action, and therefore you're free and also culpable.
Is it weird that I got like the idea of that conversation topic just brought me back to the movie theater when I watched Birds of Prey with like Emancipation of Harley Quinn movie, and I thought, yes, I want to be just like that, completely not giving a single crap and fighting people because, no, I'm just kidding, I don't want to fight people. But like I just remember like the movie did give me a sense of like freedom and fun that I haven't really felt from a lot of other things, and I just genuinely like enjoyed watching it. Go watch Birds of Prey, guys. It's really nice. But
P-R-A-Y?
What?
P-R-A-Y?
P-R-E-Y.
I know.
Birds of Prey. I can't. I like it. The way I like started to view that though, like I was trying to understand like why do I feel like this? Like why do I feel like she's blowing up buildings and stuff, like Harley Quinn in the movie, but she seems so free. Like she's having such a good time. All of them are, at least towards the climax and the end of the movie. But I thought to myself like, no, I wouldn't want to be this. I wouldn't want to like put myself in danger as much as they do. And
Yeah.
it was just an interesting like moment of reflection I had that lasted for about 5 seconds before I was like, oh, Black Canary's cry was so cool.
Thanks for the spoiler.
I haven't seen it.
Evil.
It's a solid movie. I recommend it.
Well, I think it just comes down to, well, like I said, we all have, you know, these thoughts and these feelings sometimes. And, you know, there are different outlets where we can, you know, live vicariously through it for a minute. And then it just comes back down to us catching ourselves being like, okay, that was fun. I'm done.
Yeah.
I've got that sense of fulfillment. I don't need it. The fantasy is enough for me.
And I think it comes back kind of to the idea that you guys were talking about with Exodus, is that you identify that, yeah, this makes me feel good. I get a rush from doing these bad things, but it's like that lack of control that you would kind of define as, oh, well, that's evil, that in and of itself. And so I think at that instance you can say, well, we're all kind of a little evil because we all have these tendencies to say, oh, well, I want to go and do these things I know are wrong. But I think it doesn't become an evil until the action itself comes out. So it's like it's a combination of the intent and the action in and of itself.
I agree.
That's
I mean,
what I was thinking. Sorry.
It's okay. I was gonna say I agree. It's not really evil until it's an action. I mean,
Is it?
Wait, let me just say this. Is there anything like, so can we just revel in the intent? Like, is it bad if we just kind of have imaginations where we're doing bad things, like beating people up or whatever the case may be?
No, it's
so long as it doesn't turn into action.
Is that okay? It's completely normal. It's
okay?
way more normal than you think, and that's what the fantasy and the imagination is there for. You know, so that you hopefully don't go out and do it. I mean, you know, worst case scenario, your fantasies aren't enough and you go out and murder somebody. But
I think that's why we have movies, just like how you were talking about when
Exactly.
watching Birds of Prey gave you that rush, and it's like it's this thing that you can escape the real world from. You know, of like I don't have to do it; I can just watch it.
yeah, that's why we have, you know, video games, books, movies.
Right. Haven't
other
you ever
things.
wanted to go ape shit? I'm just kidding.
And that's why I feel like those kinds of things are sort of necessary for us, because you could kind of say maybe it kind of prevents certain evils from happening because people can just practice it within their own, like in a video game, instead of doing it in real life.
Right. Like that movie The Purge, where, for one day a year, all crime is legal, even murder, and apparently it made a better society because everyone can get all their urges out in one day. If any of you have seen that movie.
I like
The premise is good, but I thought the movie itself was terrible.
Some of this ties into the rise of the anti-heroes in movies and other
Right.
media.
Oh,
That's true.
Like Deadpool.
Anti-heroes.
Shut up,
Like,
Deadpool.
Breaking Bad.
and all that. I've actually it sucks because we don't have a lot of time, but I did want to bring this part to the discussion. Is it like because y'all's earlier discussion made me think of that about does an evil action count if it's only like towards another person? Is there like a way to do evil towards yourself? Is there like a sense of like can evil only be done under a social context? Is what I'm trying to say.
If you drop
That's
a
a good
philosophy class,
question.
you are doing evil to yourself.
I think it requires the social construct because the very concept of evil comes from the social construct itself.
It's
But
true.
I think it is possible for you to do it to yourself when you start to withhold your own passions, perhaps. That's the only thing I could really think of.
Well, wouldn't that be under like the idea of what you would consider good is like stopping a sense of excess, or at least restricting yourself from something, knowing full well like, oh, I shouldn't do this because it could be bad?
Well, that's where we kind of have to draw the line to say, well, is there good or bad excess? Because then you could say, well, an excess of pursuing my passion that is rational.
Yeah, I kind of have to agree with, that you can't really have evil without you can't really have evil without a society, labeling it as such. I don't think you can really do evil unto yourself, because evil to me really is taking away something else from some freedom or some choice that somebody else would have had, or a group of people even. I'm not really sure that you can do evil unto yourself per se, because that could be taken so many different ways. Like you're, those monks that go without, pretty much anything. I mean, are they doing evil unto themselves by not indulging?
Quite the hot take.
Well, I think that's because they made that choice, and perhaps it is their own passion to pursue this sort of inner peace. But what if someone who isn't maybe perhaps an artist is drawn to, they have a real passion for art and they want to create, but they're kind of bounded by the society, and so they choose to give up that artistry for money. To say, oh no, I'm going to do this job that I hate, and I'm going to hate my life, and I'm going to live miserably.
But see, that wouldn't happen without the society's influence.
Oh no, I agree, but I'm saying, wouldn't that, I agree completely with the society part, but wouldn't that in and of itself be a self-evil kind of?
I think that would be an injustice of society upon that person.
Well, not necessarily, because that person still has the choice as whether they want to risk being broke for the rest of their life or not, whether they pursue it.
Is that a choice?
I think it's a choice ultimately.
I mean, yeah, you could choose to just completely break yourself and not have a life, but at that point, you're kind of just...
You're not living?
Yeah, you're choosing to live another day, or, you're choosing to not do that to yourself so that you might be able to create something in the future.
God, this has come full circle, because this does go back to what we said way earlier in the discussion about because if if you're not living, that's not like having the human experience, and would keeping yourself from that be considered evil? Because I know if other people would stop you from that, I know a lot of us would probably consider that evil. That's what we said earlier, would be considered a sense of a universal evil, someone stopping anyone from experiencing the human, experience. Would doing that to yourself constitute as evil?
I think in its nature it could be seen as evil, but I think ultimately the only person who can define that is yourself.
Right?
Yes.
Really?
Really?
If it's in the context of you doing it to yourself, you have to decide.
Well, it depends on the society.
Yeah.
We do live in a society, don't we, Orlando?
I think so. I thought it was my world. I thought it was Manzi's world, actually.
Actually, it's Wayne's World, and it's excellent.
There you go.
Girl.
So, do we want to go ahead and start with the finishing? What is it? What are you guys? Finishing thoughts or
final thoughts.
final thoughts? There you go.
Evil is nebulous. I'm just kidding. It's so hard to pinpoint down. There's not it really, like, again, it is a social construct. It varies from society to society.
Okay.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, if you're going to have evil, you kind of also have to have good, because it's sort of like light and
I
dark.
agree.
Can't have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a structure to it in a certain sense.
Did you want to say anything, Serena?
Oh, I just agree that everything's a social construct, and I mean, yeah, pretty much.
Always subjective.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with the idea that the society is necessary to identify evil, but I think at its very root, it's just this idea of injustice. You know, whether our ideas of justice are rational or irrational, that's for societies and people to to decide. But I think ultimately, when we all decide to say, well, what's good or bad, is because it's our ideas of justice and injustice. For me to help another person out, I feel is just. To say, oh, I'm going to kill someone, I feel is unjust, and so on and so forth. And that is what differs from person to person. But ultimately, I feel like that's the root of all of what's good and evil.
Wow, nice.
You gonna say something, Mazzy?
Well, no, let the guests here go.
Oh, yeah.
Steven, you first. All right. Well,
Think about love.
Hot takes.
I just wanted to say that in terms of evil, a more optimistic approach, in my opinion, would be to call it misguidance or perhaps an accident, because I feel like many of us were children at one point, right? There's things you just didn't know were right and wrong until you were taught, but you weren't taught that in hopes of that you would grow up and become, I guess, less than, hopefully, maybe. If you want to get super conspiracy theory, like, yeah, brainwash, government, whatever, it's in the water. But
chemtrails, me drinking the gay
fluoride.
water.
But again, like I feel like a pure evil, I guess, would just be somebody trying to destruct a shared vision, perhaps, because our founding fathers a long time ago were considered evil, or like just anybody that broke away from England, but they were fighting for the very freedom we have now. And I wouldn't, there's a lot of cool countries, but ideally, this is a great place politically, it's a great functioning system in my opinion, and it's got a lot of freedom in that sense. So
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
What's more
Yeah,
evil
it's a
to
work in progress.
society than rebellion?
Okay.
How dare
So
you
I think
stand
in the end it's about intent versus unintent, and therefore it's not up to the individual but up to society, because without intent the individual won't realize that they are evil.
Great point.
Awesome.
And also historically it can be viewed as like in the moment a revolution versus a rebellion. A revolution is just something successful, and a rebellion is seen as evil whenever it's unsuccessful.
Interesting.
Victors write the history books.
Should have talked more, man.
Right.
Manzi.
All right, sure.
Get those golden nuggets
Yeah.
of truth.
Golden
Everybody leave
nuggets
the
of
room and dim the lights.
truth. Wow, my glasses are more blurry than.
Listen, I'll just say this, folks. I love everything that everybody said. Maybe we should introduce a new segment on this show, because with the amount of students who are kind of coming into the studio, I don't exactly need to be here. And now here's what I'm saying is this. Maybe we do like a Manzi's Minute segment. Maybe I record it in my home and I just email it to you and post it.
No.
So the idea is this. I'll pick like whatever the topic is. I'll say something for like 60 seconds.
Seems like you're trying to cop out the radio.
It's not. That's not true. Not at all. It's near and dear to my heart.
That's
It's
true evil.
one of my life's greatest achievements. I'll say this. This question over whether or not evil is somehow tied to our universal nature, or even if we have universal nature, versus something more of a social construct, is one of the things that I am most fascinated by philosophically. And I'll say this: it's kind of facile to be like, well, evil is universal because every human being is capable of experiencing pain, like physical pain. So if that's clearly harmful for every single human being, regardless of when you were born or, what language you speak, what your culture is, religion, how you look, et cetera, a punch to the face is a punch to the face. And that's universally, you might think, you could say it's universally evil. It's something that all human beings can relate to as bad. But here's the thing, and this goes back to y'all's point, in fact. I'm not so sure you can equate pain with evil. Because, let's pretend I go to the gym ever. If I go to the gym and I work out really hard and then, the next day my body's in a lot of pain, that's not evil.
Right?
That's
or like
natural.
childbirth. I mean,
Yeah, a great example. Another
incredibly
example.
just
painful,
goes
but
back-
one of the most coveted, things
I
a
can't relate to
Yeah.
either experience, but
woman
yeah.
can do to society. Yeah.
That just goes back to the idea of like a sense of like doing it to yourself type of thing, and also
Yeah.
excess.
Right.
Yes, that's a great point. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is this: that I think that intent has to play a role. Maybe not the primary role, but certainly a significant one.
I think
And-
it's the definitive role.
okay. Yeah, and I think you're in good company by believing that. I just throw this out there. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So just because you have
My mom
good
hates that quote so much.
tune in. She can call in. Should we take a caller?
We should start taking
Listener?
callers.
Is that possible?
We just set up like a phone line.
Well, we actually can do that. We've done that in the past on the show where you can Skype in. Yeah, so we
That's
can have,
really cool.
Yeah, we could do that anytime we want.
Call in like all 4 of our viewers.
Oh, four. That's generous.
Hi, everybody's mom.
Oh, my mom doesn't speak to me. So hi, everybody else's. That's a joke. That's a joke. It's a joke. She's dead. No. The idea is this: that if you want to talk about evil, you have to consider again, as you're saying, the standards by which a society or community judges evil to be "quote unquote" harmful. Now, as y'all are saying, the standards of societies tend to vary depending on historical circumstances or just the availability of resources and things along those lines. Having said that, the greater amount of freedom you have, the greater amount of the possibility you have to inflict harm upon other people, even if it's unintentional. And, I want to say Christopher brought this up, finance officer here at Richland. He brought this up at the club on Tuesday. He said, you could offend somebody and cause them suffering, cause them maybe emotional harm without intending to. That doesn't make the harm itself any less intense. So it's kind of like this. Maybe the onus of responsibility is on all of us to have as close an understanding as possible of societal expectations when it comes to appropriate ways of treating people and treating yourself, which is to say doing the right thing and avoiding the wrong thing, with the understanding that maybe posterity will prove us illogical or wrong in the future, but for the time being, if you want to maximize your freedom in ways that are very human, self-expression and stuff like that, you have to, on some level, acquiesce to what you expect other people to be expecting of how you treat them and how you handle yourself and how you describe yourself and describe other people. The impact that has on things like art and self-expression is its own topic. Because now it's like, well, if that's the priority, then doesn't that limit your ability to be quote-unquote artistic? But maybe that's a topic for another time. Okay, well, we're almost 10 minutes over.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do some shout-outs. Yeah.
Does anybody else want to do shout-outs before I do mine?
Depends. What are you gonna say?
Like, if you're going to plug in your psych club, go ahead.
Oh.
Sure. It's on our next meeting is the second Tuesday of March in room W125 from 2 to 3. And I don't remember our topic. I'm so sorry.
I posted the Psych Duck promotional flyer on my door.
Thank you so much.
What time was it again?
It's it's 2 to 3. It's right before philosophy. And it's only once a month. Yeah, that's pretty much what I did last Tuesday. Me and like 5 other different people just went straight from psychology to philosophy.
Yeah, next time make sure you can plug your club in our club. I wouldn't mind. We get a lot of people, so you can do that.
Well, thanks.
I didn't mean. Oh, that sounded kind of.
No, it's okay.
Oh, my bad.
No, it's okay.
I got work at 5, so I have to dip now.
Oh man.
All right.
So, thanks for coming, man. You're always
Yes,
awesome.
thank you, Ryan.
Oof. Obviously, Philosophy Club, 3:30 to 4:30 every Tuesday. Radio show, 3 to 4 on Thursdays. I just wanted to make an announcement that we're actually going to have an art club collaboration. It's coming up. We're setting the date maybe for 3 weeks, but the topic's going to be symmetry in humans. Essentially identifying like what symmetry means to humanity, because if you look around like architecture, you look at literally everything in music and different arts, and symmetry plays a big role and a big factor as to how we carry ourselves. And that's going to be the topic. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to have some of the art students have their own personal art. They're going to bring it. They're going to explain to us. So if there's any artists who aren't involved with the art club that'd like to bring your own art and present it, you can do that as well. So
I was going to say symmetry actually plays a big role in what we perceive as, people being attractive and beautiful, and even like who we want to reproduce with. And then I don't know if you're going to say this, but also what the topic for next philosophy club is, which is lying and deception.
Lying and deception. That's right. Look at you.
I'm glad you remember that, because my class asked me that today and I couldn't remember. I lied to them.
Every other topic. I was like, the soul, the one about the soul,
Exactly.
and there was the one about political stuff. What was the topic?
Awesome.
Symmetry also plays a role in what you perceive to be beautiful in terms of artworks, too, for the record, artifacts. And I guess that's the point.
I heard a really good quote. It was about art, and they were talking about, well, what's the goal of the artist? And I thought it was interesting. They said the artists, their purpose is that they take us away from reality. They essentially imagine the unimaginable. So they kind of bring us from this stage of reality and cognition that we have yet to experience. And I don't know why I just randomly plugged that in, but I thought that was pretty interesting.
No, that was a good plug-in.
All right, guys. Well, you want to finish this off, Nancy?
You got the disclaimer in front of you. Read the disclaimer.
You got it. You are listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are my own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the DCCCD.
Which is now officially Dallas College. Do you guys know that?
Oh, yeah.
DCCCD, the name has changed. We're now
Hey.
Dallas College.
Yeah, they absorbed all of the campuses into Dallas College, so we're just the Richland campus.
Yeah, the crown jewel. The capital campus, you might say.
Is everybody familiar with our saying, by
thank
the
you.
way?
I was about to introduce that.
No?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Oh.
You want to do the honors, Nancy?
Okay, so the tagline, we did this last time. The tagline is think about it. Remember? So I want everybody to get as arrogant as they can, get as manzy as they can. And on the count of 3, just say, think about it. 1, 2, think about it. That'll do it, folks.
Wow.
Go for it.
1, 2, 3.
Think about
it.